Am I the bad guy for getting an apartment next door to my friend's old place? I recently signed a lease for a new apartment that I'll be sharing with my sister. We decided to move back to the town where we grew up after our mother passed away unexpectedly a little over a month ago. It was a tough decision, but we felt it was important to be closer to home during this difficult time. The apartment we found is next door to where my friend used to live with her ex-boyfriend. She hasn't lived there since their breakup last spring, and I know that the end of that relationship was really hard for her. After my sister and I viewed the apartment, I texted her to let her know we liked it and were planning to apply. I also expressed my sympathy for her situation, acknowledging that it wouldn't be easy for her to see us moving in next door. To my surprise, she responded with anger, saying I had betrayed her and chosen the apartment over our friendship. She felt I wasn't taking her trauma seriously, and I was taken aback by her reaction. I thought she would understand, especially since I was dealing with my own grief. I reminded her that I had to drive past my mother's funeral home and visit her grave every week, and that I understood what it meant to face difficult circumstances. She insisted that my choice to sign the lease was a conscious decision, unlike her loss, and she was upset that I wasn't prioritizing her feelings. I never intended to invalidate her experience, but I couldn't believe how dismissive she was of my own struggles. I acknowledged that the first few visits might be tough for her, and I was genuinely sorry for that, but I also had to prioritize my own needs. After signing the lease, I felt the weight of her disappointment. I think she wanted me to reconsider my decision, but that wasn't going to happen. I was already feeling overwhelmed with grief, and this situation only added to my stress. A few weeks later, we finally met to talk things over. In that time, she had found a new apartment just 2 blocks away from mine. During our conversation, she expressed feeling invalidated and uncared for because I hadn't sat down with her in person to discuss my decision. She accused me of reactivating her trauma and being a surface-level friend. I felt disappointed by her lack of understanding, especially given my current emotional state. I told her that I wasn't sure I could continue our friendship after how she had treated me. She seemed blindsided by my response and expected the conversation to go differently. While it broke my heart to consider the end of our friendship, I realized that I needed to protect my own mental health. She eventually apologized, but it felt insincere, especially since it came only after I expressed my doubts about our friendship. But I'm beginning to understand that sometimes friendships change, especially during tough times.
Bert's sister 27F tracked me down and wants to be part of my 26F's life. I don't want her at my wedding or in my life at all. I've always known I was adopted. My parents, who are truly wonderful people, have been open about my past, which includes a history of abuse and neglect. Growing up, I had a sister named Elizabeth, who is my twin in a sense. We were both adopted and bonded over our shared experiences. Now, as I prepare to marry the love of my life, Jake, in December, I'm excitedly planning my wedding, which will be a child-free event. However, everything changed when I received a message from my biological sister, Janice, who tracked me down about a month ago. I hadn't checked my Facebook messages in a while, so I only saw her lengthy letter in September. In it, she shared her story of how she found me and expressed her desire to connect with our biological family. She mentioned needing to understand her past and included some pictures that seemed to confirm our connection. At first, I was taken aback. I showed the message to my parents, and they confirmed that her story checked out. We began talking, and while she was friendly and eager to connect, I found myself losing interest. To me, she felt like a stranger, not a sister. I didn't feel that emotional bond that many people expect when it comes to family. Janice has 2 children, and she often talks about them, even referring to me as Auntie Emily. She seemed very excited about the idea of family, and I could sense her loneliness. However, every time we spoke, I found myself counting down the minutes until the conversation ended. I tried to be supportive, but I just couldn't muster the emotional connection she was seeking. As the wedding approached, Janice mentioned that she had taken time off work and might need to stay with me due to financial constraints. This made me uncomfortable. I felt guilty for not wanting her in my life, especially since she was so enthusiastic about forming a relationship. But the thought of having her at my wedding or in my life felt overwhelming. I confided in Jake, who understood my feelings. He suggested that if I wanted to cut ties, I should do so. He had spoken with Janice and found her to be a bit too clingy for comfort. Her excitement about our newfound connection felt more like pressure to me, and I began to feel increasingly uneasy about the situation. I knew I had to address this. I wanted to be honest without being hurtful. I considered a message that would express my feelings clearly, that while I appreciated her desire to connect, I simply didn't feel that familial bond. I had already established my family in my life, and I didn't want to pretend otherwise. In the end, I realized that family isn't solely defined by blood. It's about the connections we choose to nurture and the people who genuinely add value to our lives. I knew I had to prioritize my own feelings and boundaries, even if it meant disappointing someone who was looking for a connection. Navigating this unexpected reunion has been challenging, but I've learned that it's okay to set boundaries and that not every biological tie needs to translate into a close relationship. I never expected my wedding planning to take such an unexpected turn. As I was busy preparing for one of the most important days of my life, I received a call from someone I had never met before, my birth sister, Janice. She tracked me down after years of separation and, to my surprise, wanted to be a part of my life, including attending my wedding. At first, I was taken aback. I mean, we were practically strangers. I had grown up with my parents and siblings, and the thought of inviting someone I barely knew into my home, especially during such a hectic time, was overwhelming. Janice had a long list of plans for her visit, including questions about wedding details, dinner options, and even the dresses for her daughters, whom she wanted to be flower girls. It felt like she was inviting herself into my life without even confirming if she was welcome. During our conversation, I learned that she had been in contact with two of my other siblings. They had tried to reach out to her, but ultimately cut off communication. It seemed they were doing well, having created their own families and lives, yet they had refused to introduce her to their children. Janice expressed a longing to connect with me and her other siblings, claiming I was her last link to family. She wanted me to help her and her daughters find a sense of belonging. I had to be honest with her. I explained that her approach felt too rushed, and that I was uncomfortable with the idea of her staying with me during my wedding. I emphasized that I had a family I was raised with, and I didn't see her or her children as part of that. I made it clear that I wanted to cut off contact, as I didn't have the energy to help her navigate her past or our shared history. Janice seemed taken aback by my response. She mentioned feeling alone, and that I was her last family member, but I reminded her that her children were her family now. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. I blocked her on all platforms, knowing that I needed to protect my peace during this significant time in my life. In the days that followed, I reflected on the situation. While I felt for Janice and the struggles she might have faced, I knew I had to prioritize my own well-being. My partner Jake was concerned that she wouldn't take my rejection well. We even prepared for the possibility that she might show up uninvited, ensuring that our family was aware and ready to support us. As I navigated these emotions, I couldn't help but wonder about Janice's past and what led her to seek me out. I felt a twinge of sympathy for her, but I also recognized that I couldn't be her savior. It was a tough realization, but I had to stand firm in my decision for the sake of my future and my family. In the end, I felt a sense of closure. I had made the right choice for myself, even if it meant turning away someone who was searching for connection. I hoped that Janice would find the support she needed elsewhere, and I could finally focus on my wedding and the life I was building with my loved ones.
My 23F boyfriend, 23M, of 3 years, is using Tinder, claiming to be looking for friends and hangouts. I recently found myself in a whirlwind of emotions when I discovered that my boyfriend Dave, who I had been with for 3 years, was using Tinder. It all started when a single friend of mine called to inform me about his profile. I was completely blindsided. We had been living together and even planning our engagement, so to hear that he was on a dating app was heart-wrenching. When I checked his profile, I was shocked. His bio read that he was looking to make some new, exciting and fun friends and looking to hang out, which felt incredibly suspicious. The pictures he chose were telling too. One featured him at the beach in a tiny man thong I had jokingly given him, and he had cropped me out of the photo. I felt betrayed and confused. When I confronted him about it, he laughed it off, dismissing my concerns as me being possessive. He claimed my best friend was just being nosy and insisted he was entitled to seek friends, even if they were strangers. I tried to brush it off, but the feeling of betrayal lingered. I didn't want to throw away 3 years over what might just be my insecurity. After some advice from friends, I decided to take a bold step. I created a Tinder profile using a friend's picture, pretending to be someone he didn't know. I reached out to him, and to my disbelief, he responded positively and even made plans to meet me at a coffee shop we frequented. I was stunned. As he headed out to meet me, I packed up his belongings, ready for him to return to an empty house. When he came back, he was furious, demanding to know what was going on. My dad, who had come over after hearing my distress, was there to support me. He firmly told Dave to leave, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I watched him gather his things. It was painful to end things, but I knew I couldn't forgive such a breach of trust. I allowed him to return in a week to collect his furniture, but that would be the last time I would see him. I was also dreading the inevitable conversation with his mother, who I cared for deeply and knew would be heartbroken. As I sat there reflecting on the past 3 years, I realized that sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the best outcomes. I deserved better than someone who would betray my trust so easily.